Welcome to Learning Curve, the podcast where we explore how companies can harness emerging technologies to drive real business impact. I'm your co host, Holly Fake, and today I'm interviewing Matt Sharp, my fantastic fellow co host.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
Today we'll be focusing on everyone's favorite topic right now, artificial intelligence. Every AI journey starts with a decision, and for some, that decision is to bring an expert who could lead the way. Today's episode is all about taking that first big step towards integrating AI into your organization. We're sharing the inside story of how Flexion invested in AI, not just in the tools or software, but by hiring our first ever AI strategist. This is an episode for anyone who's been wondering, where do I even start with AI? What does an AI role look like? How do we build capabilities when we're not an AI first company? We'll answer all of that and more. We hope by the end of this episode, you'll understand what prompted our company to hire an AI strategist, what the hiring process looked like, and what we learned along the way. So, if you've ever wondered how to hire an AI leader without spending $500 on a masterclass subscription, stick around. As Matt would say, the water is fine. With that, let's welcome our guest, Flexion's in-house AI strategist, Matt Sharp. Matt has 12 plus years of experience in AI. He is also the author of the book LLMs in Production and an engineer extraordinaire. Welcome, Matt. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to be here. Just a little bit about me. As you mentioned, I have 12 years experience in data and AI. I spent a lot of that focusing on, how do we deploy these models? So I've spent a lot holding every single hat from data scientist to data engineer to MLOps engineer to AI engineer. I've done it all. Very happy to be here and kind of share my experience with everyone.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Matt. And now let me introduce someone who's worn more hats at Flexion than I can count, Doug Kinesic. He's the one who brought Matt on board, and around here we've referred to him as the chief of many things. Doug is our trusted tech sage, a strategic thinker, and someone who's been guiding Flexion through some big innovation moments. Doug, with all the roles you play, what's the one you enjoy the most or the one that energizes you these days?
Yeah, so thank you for asking me and thanks for having me on. So Flexion is a company that, in order to adapt to the kind of changes that we see happening in the world all the time, AI being just the most recent example, is the volatility and disruption of the world kind of requires that Flexion people have the autonomy to solve problems themselves, that there's not really a bureaucracy in the organization, there's not really an org chart within the organization per se. And where there is one, it's very shallow and very light. And so, but for that to work, for our teams and our people to be able to solve those problems in a rapid response sort of way, we have to have systems in place that allow them to communicate, to share ideas, to feel safe, to be able to have challenging conversations and to challenge one another, to recognize problems and act on those problems without having to seek permission. Well, building those systems has really been my primary role, is helping our company build them. And what I enjoy most is seeing them play out the way we hoped. I mean, we don't know what the details are ever going to be when we're solving problems, but to see people use those systems to be able to take the initiative with success is the most enjoyable part of my job.
And so, thinking about those systems, I want to uncover what really went into designing the right AI role for Flexion, finding the right candidate slash organizational fit, and setting the stage with doing something meaningful with AI and not just slapping it on our website and calling it innovation. Can you set the stage for me a little bit, Doug? What was the exact moment you realized Flexion needed to invest in AI?
I think that we are probably not unlike a lot of people who are listening. ChatGPT 3.5 came out. I don't even know. It feels like only yesterday, but years ago. And everybody was going, "What is this thing?" Because it hit the internet, all at once, and everybody was talking about it all the time. And so were we. I mean, Flexion Delivery Leadership, a number of people in FDL, that's the acronym we use for our group. observed that emergence of ChatGPT 3.5, started playing with it, and we all had the same questions: is what does this mean for us as a company coming down the road? Because the hype was such that all you were hearing was this is going to take over everything. Right? This is going to take over the world. And so, Flexion had to listen. We had to um, think about what ChatGPT was capable of. We had to start experimenting with it. But we didn't have at that time a dedicated sub part of the organization that focused on AI. But that was the first moment that we knew that something needed to happen, something within the organization needed to happen to allow us to receive value and to give value when it came to that space.
So what was that something that needed to happen?
Well, I mean, we felt like we needed to. Well, it was tricky, right? Because on one hand, you know that you need to get smart about something new. As a company, we had to get smart about AI, but you also know that a lot of it is hype, and you don't know how much of it is hype. You don't know how much of it is real versus how much of it is hype. A lot of people are trying to make a buck off of it, so there's that. So the balance is how do we learn about AI at the right pace so that we are learning as quickly as we can without over investing in things that are going to end up not actually bearing any fruit down the road at all. And that money could have been better allocated elsewhere that we might have missed an opportunity to do. So that's always been the question, right? That we had.
I want to dig a little bit into the right pace. You just spoke about investing at the right pace. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, sure. If you look at every single thing that is new and amazing about what's emerging in AI, and you invest in all of those things, and you try to understand everything, that would obviously that would consume every investment dollar you have. And you could never keep up anyway. I mean, that's one of the things we learned about when ChatGPT 3.5 first came out, is that every month that you looked at what the current state of the world was when it came to AI, it was already advancing faster than we could possibly keep up. So and that's scary, is to not actually feel like there's anything that you can do to keep up with the pace of change. Um, but anyway, there is a risk that you will overinvest in AI, which is basically, robbing you of the opportunity to invest in other things, or underinvesting. Obviously, that, if AI really is as transformational as it appears that it is, and you underinvest, then you completely get left behind, and the company may not survive that.
So we tried a couple of different things. What about when did we come to the point that we were thinking about investing in an AI leader?
Well, as we saw the pace of change, and we're really tried to come to grips with how fast AI was evolving and the technology was evolving, and how fast it was being used to supplement or help different people, right, in our industry. And we write software for a living, and so being able to use AI to support that industry and support that offering that we had, um, we were very much. So let me see. I'm basically waffling here. What was your question again?
About the questions about when did we start thinking about investing in an AI leader?
Oh, yeah. So it really just, it didn't take long for us to realize again that the pace of change of AI in the industry was just moving way faster than we were. That's really when we realized we needed help. Flexion has a lot of people who are autonomously trying new things and doing research and trying to improve themselves. But we were kind of without a leader, without a direction. And when all of our people are doing their best, but yet we don't have necessarily a path to follow, it's clear that we would be basically over-investing, because we'd be investing in many things that are pure hype and they have actually no value. So that's when we realized we didn't really know the way. We didn't know where we were wasting time, where we really need to allocate effort, and that's when we realized we needed to hire someone for that particular, role.
Matt, Doug just hit on a lot of different topics. One is like the hype at AI. In your capacity, can you talk a little bit about your experience with that in general, I guess?
Yeah. Like from my experience on the other end, when essentially right after ChatGPT came out, I just remember being there sitting with other people and like we've been watching, GPT-2 and all these other language models come around and like GPT-3 had been around I think at least an entire year before ChatGPT came out. And all ChatGPT was is mostly just like a GUI in front of it, right? That people could play with, and it just exploded. And so there was just this kind of eye-opening, experience from our end. And that's actually when I decided to write my book. It was like, oh, this is kind of exploding. Lots of people are really trying to jump into this, but there's not a lot of material or learning material out there around how to do it and like how to do it like really in a business setting. Sure, there's material out there that can kind of teach you how to do it, but they're really more geared towards students or educational content. But like, how do you actually build a product that can actually serve customers, right? And so when ChatGPT came out, there was like demo after demo of people showing, oh, look at this cool thing I did, but like none of those turned into products. It's only until recently that we start to see real products coming from LLMs, and that's because there's a huge difference between building a demo and building something that people will pay for and will use in their normal workflow. And so that's what we wanted to teach people in my book. And so like through that, it required lots of research. Even someone who had lots of foundational understanding, things were moving very, very fast. And so I found it hard to kind of keep on top of things and really know what was going on. So I can just imagine, when Doug is talking from his end, is like it probably was just like, like I'm barely staying afloat. Everyone else must be drowning. And so I can definitely relate and feel, what the struggle was.
Yeah, and that's definitely how it felt, you know. And I use the word overinvest to say that we had a lot of people at Flexion trying to learn these things. Overinvest might not be the right word. It's more like misinvest. I mean, when you don't know what you're doing and you're starting to pour energy into something, you know for a fact that a lot of that energy is malinvestment or misinvestment, and that was really what we were afraid of.
So tell me the story of how you two met.
Yeah, so Flexion has a process. So, every we have something called random coffees. Every week, you're paired up with a random person at Flexion just to socialize. No big deal there. But one of the people I was paired up with is a guy named Coulter Natras. He's one of our data engineers at Flexion, and I was outside and we were talking, and we started dabbing talking about ChatGPT and AI and how important it was going to be, and the topic of basically hiring an expert just came up because it was heavily on my mind. Like I mentioned before, we had started to think about it already. I knew that Coulter was, heavily into data, and which is, of course, the front end of any sort of AI is data. And when I mentioned that, he goes, you know what? I know somebody. I know somebody that you might want to meet. And I said, "Well, let me have it." So he basically gave me Matt's name and told me about Matt in his book he's writing, which to me sounded ideal. You have the person who is recognized as an industry expert, who's just published a book on the very topic of, the skill set exactly that we were trying to find. And so I asked Coulter to see if he could arrange a meeting, and he did.
And what happened next?
Um, well, Coulter called me, you know, he wasn't, it'd been a couple of years since we talked, but we actually used to work really closely together back at Intel and Micron. There was a joint venture between the two, and um, we worked on several different kind of projects there. Knew him really well. We actually going further back, we actually met at BYU, the university we went. We were both chemical engineers there. So kind of a long history there. So when he reached out, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, let's talk. And he, you know, from the conversation, he's like, hey, we're kind of looking for someone like you, is uh and so kind of that led to some different conversations around what is Flexion, what do they do, whether or not I was actually looking for a job at the time, and just kind of the opportunity led from there.
I wanted to get to the story that you guys told me earlier, which is that you wrote your own job description, right, Matt? What was that process like?
Yeah, so at the time I wasn't necessarily looking for a job. I was pretty happy with where I was. I enjoyed the company I worked for. I enjoyed the people I worked for. I enjoyed what I was doing. But there were some things about the job that I felt like I could be doing more. And so after that conversation with Coulter, I was like, oh, these other people are interested in me. Maybe I should start considering and looking around. But at the time, I wasn't necessarily committed to leaving. And so, as promised, Coulter got me in touch with Doug. And so I had a conversation with Doug, and Doug told me, hey, we're looking for someone like you, just the way Coulter said. And you know, we know that you're not necessarily looking to leave, but we would really appreciate if you could help us, kind of craft a job posting because we don't know what we don't know. And so, just kind of feeling like I was doing a favor for a friend, like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll help you. These are things you should look for in a candidate. Like, do they understand, some of these concepts and some of these, latest tech? Um, not fully realizing that I was writing it for myself. But as I was doing it, Doug is kind of whispering in my ear, hey, you should probably apply for this too, now that we got this job posting. And so it was a very kind of unique experience. And I ended up did applying, obviously, since I got the job, but it was very much a unique experience. I don't think a lot of people have had the opportunity to write their own job posting, but their own job description. But yeah, that's something I've done in my career now. So.
And having you join us and apply was my plan all along. I mean, that was really what we were trying to do. It's just as I said before, we were worried about malinvestment or misinvestment of our funds, and to me, that same thing that doesn't just apply to the technology. It applies to the hiring process. We don't want to guess about that either. Just like we don't want to guess about how to use AI the best way. So that's why I thought that not Coulter, Matt here writing the job description would ensure that we were really looking for the right thing.
What was the moment where you realized, yeah, I do want to apply?
Um, I think there was this point. It was probably like very last minute. It was like when Doug finally said, "Hey, we've took your job description and we've posted it. We really hope you apply." And I just felt, hey, this is an opportunity for me to go back, work with a close friend. Um, it was also like my interactions with Doug and from my research into Flexion of kind of Flexion has very unique kind of fundamentals and kind of how they approach work that I was very interested in. Flexion, more than any org I know, is very, very flat. And I've worked at several different startups who have tried to be flat. But at Flexion, it really feels like it is, where individuals here have a lot more autonomy to really pave their path and kind of work on what they need to. And so that was something I was looking for. The other thing that really drove me is this position kind of scared me a little bit. And that was a draw to me. I'm often trying to seek to get out of my comfort zone and learn new things. And this role felt like one that it was very strategic. It was very high level. It was an opportunity for me to move away from kind of the very back end where I was at my old position, where I was, building an MLOps platform, very heavy in code. Maybe like 70% of my time was in code. And this felt like an opportunity where it would be more client facing. It'd be more opportunities to kind of share and grow. And after writing my book, this was something I realized I wanted to do more of. I really enjoyed the process of writing, communicating, sharing with others, being, helping other people grow. And so it just felt like the right next step for me. So I ended up applying.
I love hearing just the desire to make an impact as one of the things that brought you to the organization. And Doug, I think it's so clever to hear part of that was having someone go about writing their own job description so that then there's all along that was part of your plan is to create that sense of ownership that Flexion is so off to do. I think I have a couple more questions in general about what makes hiring an expert hard.
Well, I mean, not knowing if that person is really the expert. It's getting a good feel for whether or not they are authentic. There are a lot of pretenders out there, right? There's a lot of people who have imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of people who are actually imposters, right? So there's that. And when you don't know enough about the field itself, it's difficult to know. And that's one of the reasons our hiring process does, like a lot of companies, we're not unique in this regard, but our hiring process has a number of different types of interviews used to learn more and more about a person, from their biases and their instincts to their technical capabilities to the way they'll work together as teams, within our teams. And we have the same thing here. And so our hope was just that through constant exposure of Matt in an interview context, we would learn more about him. And we learned that he was as advertised. He's, very, very bright. He's very articulate. Both of those to me have to go together. There's plenty of people out there who are smart and can't communicate, and vice versa. And I think that, in the role that we needed, which is part teacher, part coach, part engineer, part evangelist, part strategist, we need that combination. So we didn't only, I'll just say we didn't only he didn't have Matt help write his own job description. We actually have him. We basically said, "Hey, you are now the strategist leader at Flexion. Tell us what we need to do, and what do we need to? What are the most important things to invest in? What are the things we shouldn't invest in as much? And we can't spread Matt too thin any more than we can spread anybody else too thin. So that's sort of an important part of Matt's role too, is to help tune his own level of engagement in the different strategic efforts that we're trying to accomplish, Flexion.
That makes me want to ask Matt the question, what are the most important things to invest in?
I think there's definitely different levels of investment, right? And everyone is at this stage, right? Like we're, and I feel a lot of companies are in this point where they're starting to do an AI transformation. And I've been thinking a lot about like the digital transformations of like 20, 30 years ago, and some companies built a website and called it done, and they're no longer around with us, right? And so like there's this aspect of AI transformation that is somewhat skin deep. It's somewhat saying, hey, we do AI regardless of not actually changing the business. There's another aspect where, okay, you train your employees how to use the internet, and that gets you a little better results because now your employees have access to, Yahoo and Google at the time, and can start finding information and become smarter. And nowadays it's like, okay, now learning how to use different, you know, AI agents and their different aspects to maybe help you write code or other things. And so there's kind of this modernization aspect, but there's also like the digital transformation. It goes deeper than both of those things, right? It's really understanding how AI, um, Gen AI, how is it really fundamentally kind of changing some of our workflows, some of our patterns, some of our uh, just how we get the job done. And so there is this kind of levels of investment that you will get more reaping out, the deeper you go in. And this is completely aside from like, is your company deciding to be a builder of AI? Like, are you out there wanting to build AI products to kind of sell those AI products to help, in the consulting space, help other people build those AI products? Not everyone needed to build the internet to take advantage of it. And so, your company kind of has to decide on where they want to go to, what expertise level they want to be at, and really kind of understand some of those aspects.
Sounds like a tremendous amount to unpack there, and maybe something we'll cover in another episode because, as you mentioned, there's so many different layers that you would have to consider depending on what your company's aims are. So
Mhm.
I will just ask one more question before we wrap up. What advice would you give other firms or candidates trying to find the right match, trying to find the right expert to lead the way?
That's a good question. I'll let Doug answer that first, and I'll
Yeah,
follow
I'll
up.
start. I'm sure you have some thoughts as well. I think at Flexion, oh, I'll say it. Part of it is that we were lucky. I mean, we happened to get connected with Matt through a mutual contact, obviously one of our employees. Not every company has that opportunity, and I can't undervalue how important that was to actually making this hire with Matt. But that's not a strategy, right? That's something that you luck into. But maybe part of the strategy that you do want to think about is keeping your options open, exploring every avenue because you can make your own luck, right? If you have the ability to invest in the search, invest in learning about who's out there and what they're available, what their availability is, just like you would perhaps with any key job. AI isn't probably any different than any other key role in an organization in that respect. It's just right now there's a lot fewer mats out there than there are, a lot of other roles. So I think that's probably, I guess the advice that I would have is really don't give up, is that keep looking, don't settle for a pretender. I mean, we had a, not only did our interview process out, but again, Matt wrote a book and you can actually go look and see that book and learn a little bit about what's in that book. That helps create the credibility that you really are looking for in a new hire. Um, and not that there's a lot of people out there writing AI books either. But I don't know, Matt, what are your thoughts about what people can do to try to find, that right candidate?
There's definitely an aspect, uh, kind of when I think about this, and Doug has kind of mentioned, is there's people with imposter syndrome, so they undersell themselves, and there's people who are imposters who oversell themselves, a bit more confident in what they are. They can speak the language, talk the talk, but not necessarily walk the walk. And so there's definitely an aspect, um, you know, data science and AI, it's new. It's only been around a little over 10 years. So there's really not a whole lot of people who have been walking the walk. You know, People might indicate, hey, I've been doing it for a lot longer. And, you know, data science as a concept has definitely been around longer than 10 years. But until we had like the GPUs available, it was just a concept. It was just, math before, and there wasn't much power behind it until recently. And so
Mhm.
you really have to kind of think about some of these aspects of, can they really do what they want? I remember, 5 years ago, there was a statistic going around saying, 80% of data science initiatives fail. I saw the number yesterday, or they recalculate the number, and for last year, the number was 79%. So we've made almost no progress. And a large part of this comes from the fact that, a lot of this is just people reshuffling these leaders who keep on failing. Their resume
Mhm.
looks good, but they're not, they don't have those boots in the trenches experience. And so I would say that is something you should definitely be looking for is, you know, don't just find someone who can talk the talk, but find someone who can walk the walk. And you can find those things, I've written a book that's public, people can find it. There might be GitHub repos, but a lot of people might not have public, you know, code that they can show, or public work. So
Mhm.
in that case, try to do the homework, try to like get references and ask, and really find out, because hopefully those references, they might have public work that you can really double check and say, okay, I trust their references, they seem legitimate, and so there's kind of this homework that has to happen. And if there's any concern at all, you can always have a trial period, right? Like, sometimes people are a little bit, they hire someone, they later find out they're not a good fit, but they hold on to them for way too long. Um,
Mhm.
and so those are just different things to really consider and think about when you're hiring for any technical talent, right? Because, whenever you're going into a technical talent that you can't necessarily know everything about, these are things to be thinking about as well,
Mhm.
strategies to employ.
Those all seem like great strategies. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, let me add a couple more thoughts that surfaced when he was talking. One is um, don't rely solely on your existing recruiting system, unless your recruiting system really does include all your employees. I mean, like I said, I got introduced with Matt through just one of the Flexion employees that I happened to be having a random coffee with. That's important to me. When I said keep all your options open, I mean that. I mean, make sure your entire organization is part of the sourcing process of being able to find a candidate. The other thing I'll say is, part of our interview process is we have a challenge phase where we actually have somebody work through some sort of a problem. And what we learned during that phase is that there's a lot of people whose resume says I'm an AI expert. What we noticed is that a lot of them are very, very data oriented. They know a lot about data. They feel more like data engineers. And clearly data engineering and data is a huge part of AI, but it's not everything. It's not the whole package. It's just a key component. And so I won't necessarily call that person an imposter, but it could be easy for us to misinterpret a certain set of skills as well-rounded AI expertise. And we noticed that just because everybody we interviewed except for Matt fit that particular profile.
You spoke a lot about different strategies, and I'm just going to recap some of the things we talked about. Looking for examples, code to show, and also issuing challenges within the recruitment process. Having a trial period, I kind of love that idea, making sure that that person is also a good fit for your organization. They may be a great AI expert, but are they going to fit in with your larger culture, organizational culture? And then not to rely on the existing recruiting system, leveraging and tapping on every employee to see if they know someone that might be a good fit. And then just looking for real life code, real life examples that you can get in front of to see if there's proof in the pudding. Is there anything anyone else wants to add before?
Oh, I think that was a great summary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whether you decide to invest in AI by hiring a guide or not, we hope this episode gives you a behind the scenes glimpse into what an AI expert hiring process can look like on both sides of the coin. Flexion started by having an expert define the right mix of requirements, engaging that individual by offering the opportunity to take ownership and drive meaningful change, and finding that rare jewel of a candidate that doesn't just have the technical acumen, but also shares the organizational values and passion for learning with heart. who can help us navigate that learning curve. Of course, there isn't always a recipe. There are some key points from what we shared today, though. One of those is think outside of the box. There aren't a lot of true AI strategy experts out there. There's a lot of pretenders and amateurs. We've given you some ideas of how you can sort through those. Be humble in the way you search. We weren't really sure what we were looking for. And in allowing Matt to write the job description, we were able to attract top talent. Whether or not you find a guide as your first step towards investing AI, great technical innovation isn't just about algorithms and credentials. It's about having a growth mindset, staying humble, curious, and being willing to experiment and grow. That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe and share the podcast with your leadership team. And be sure to tune in to our next episode, where we'll be exploring a few of our earliest experiments into artificial intelligence. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, I'm Holly Fake.
And I'm Matt Sharp.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.